doing? Boy, I haven't heard his name in a long time.
He's fine. Elihu's been on my show a bunch of times, so I was a little surprised he was having a hiccup, but stuff happens. Hey, everybody, we're live, and I am excited.
$25 active sunglasses for anyone. That includes you, miscellaneous fat.
And I love the fact that it started off that way, because I couldn't think of any better music or anything to use, because it reminds me of some of the music that I heard at both A's and Giants games. Pat Gallagher, Andy Dolich, longtime friends. Pat, president of Giants Enterprises, the man who, as I told him off camera, and I'll say this again, is the one who, if the Giants and the world were visited by aliens, they decided to come to San Francisco, he would already have a layout of how they could have the convention at the facility, along with the pricing that they could pay in their own currency. That's how genius this man is. And
well, that's very nice. Thank you. Too much credit.
Oh, hey. And on top of that, he was instrumental in hosting one of the best Super Bowls, the best Super Bowl I've been to, Super Bowl 50. Congratulations. And the man next to him, Andy Dolich, and I go all the way back to 1997.
Yeah, way before that, even then, Zennie.
Hey.
Xenophon.
Yes. When this man that is coming into the room, Mayor Harris.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor. Good to see you.
Good to see all of you.
Nice to meet you.
Welcome.
Hey, see you
welcome, boss. Great day. And you showed up right at the right time, boss, because as I was saying to Andy, I first met him in 97 when we had the whole dispute regarding electricity use between the Athletics.
Right. 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's electricity? There's nothing electric.
Yeah, right. No question about that.
And so Andy has the distinction of being a key executive, not just for the Athletics, but for the San Francisco 49ers and the Golden State Warriors and the Memphis Grizzlies. And I believe even you did a little consulting with the Raiders too, right?
But no, I never, ever did any consulting with the Raiders.
Don't worry about it.
Other than being told by Al Davis when the Raiders came back, oh, we got 2 exhibition games and the city and the county are going to owe us a crap load of money unless you sell 50,000 tickets. Oh, hi. How are you doing?
Well, I was going to say, listen, the statute of limitations run on anything anyway, so you're all right.
Yeah, you got it. Oxymoron would be consulting for the Raiders. That's right, an oxymoron.
Exactly.
And Andy has, on top of all that, himself been a major consultant and also a teacher in sports and sport management. And my boss, Elihu Harris, two-term mayor of Oakland, the youngest, I believe, when he was elected prior to that as California Assemblyman and chancellor of the Peralta Community College District, but he is also known as the last Oakland elected official on the side of the Bay, well, Oakland side, to have successfully built, people don't realize this, an arena. Warriors Arena was built without controversy, without bond issue controversy. And Elihu, I applaud you for that. Congratulations.
Thank
you. You know, yeah. So, folks, we're here today to address a question that has been on the minds of many, but this is the first time that we've gotten together people representing business and government. And I invited San Francisco Mayor Willie Brown as well, so he may be chiming in at any time. But to answer this question, why are sports teams leaving Oakland? And I want to start off that question. I want to start with kind of go clockwise around the room, if you will. Start with Pat. Pat, what, in your view, from your place, what is it about Oakland where it seems like we're hemorrhaging sports teams?
Well, I think I'll say some of it is bad luck. Some of it is leadership and a vision, and I think some of it also is timing. I mean, as I said earlier, if somebody had said 30 years ago that the Giants would be playing in a beautiful downtown waterfront ballpark in San Francisco, you'd need to have your head examined. So sometimes an idea that needs maybe a few failures ahead. I mean, we wound up losing 4 elections before we actually had the plan. So these things are not easy to do, and I don't need to tell Mayor Harris that they're just not easy to do. They're controversial. There's a lot of emotion about them. So I don't think, I think sometimes Oakland I think they get a bad rap because I think they've had some bad luck. But I also think they need, what they really, need is a vision. And I just don't think it's anything more than that. The A should certainly stay, I hope. And I don't know what the chances are of the current plan. There's a lot of moving pieces to it. But just bad luck. Oakland deserves. Oakland can support with its because of its location and because of the transportation and everything. It certainly can support professional sports. Just gotta have the right place.
Andy?
3 key elements to any successful entity: teamwork, leadership, and trust. Teamwork, leadership, and trust. And I look at Elihu, who served 2 terms as mayor. I think one of the most difficult jobs in America today is mayor of a major American city. You can just list the challenges that have nothing to do with sports, but have everything to do with living life. And that's enough to keep you up 24/7, 365. Forget about sports. As I looked at it, and I came here when the Haas bought the team from Charlie Finley, Elihu for $11 million. $11 million. There are crappy second basemen in baseball now who make more than $11 million a year, and we don't even know their names. And how quickly things change, just as Pat was talking about with the vision that his group had, along with Willie Brown and other elected officials, which has become the miracle of Mission Bay today. The same could happen in Oakland, but over these last few decades, there hasn't been teamwork, leadership, and trust between the team, between Major League Baseball, and between the elected officials in the community. And that's why you have 2 that are gone, one across the bay, one across state lines, and the other talking about what I believe is one of the most disingenuous statements of all time, a parallel path between Oakland and Neonville.
I think he means Las Vegas when he says Leonville, just for folks watching. Mayor Harris?
Well, I don't disagree with anything that's been said, but I would add this to it. Not only have sports become more competitive, the issue in many regards is the public financing of sports stadiums has become very rare. And those public entities that have the capacity to do public financing, as Las Vegas has an edge. What the A's are doing in Oakland under this current strategy is relatively unique, with tax increment financing being made available to help with the financing of the infrastructure and the development around it. But in Vegas, they got state bonds supported by local bonds to be able to finance the new Raider Stadium, for example. I don't think it ever will pencil out, but as an investment in tourism and other attributes, I think certainly it makes sense for Las Vegas. They want to be a major league city. They now have football and hockey, and if they can add baseball, they will do so. In a city that's basically a small market overall, they believe they can support all those teams. I don't believe you can support them with tourists. I don't think that many people are coming from outside of Vegas to go to see any particular sports team.
Well, they might come to see one game from Buffalo for football, right. But they're surely not going to see 3 games by the Cleveland Indians when it's 114 degrees.
You got it. That's my position. Unless they talk about building an underground stadium. But let me say more than that. What it takes is a unified command, if you will, where everybody's on the same page. There's an agreement about what the task is, what's going to be done, how much it's going to cost, and a strategy about which it's going to be financed. And it takes a little give and take from everybody if there's that desired outcome. We've seen in Los Angeles, for example, most of the new sports facilities have been financed privately, not publicly. It takes that kind of ownership. The Haas family invested a lot in the team. They bought it for $11 million, but they put a lot of money into creating a championship. So did the Warriors ownership. Joe Lacob
Right.
and Peter Gruber came in and they invested a lot of money. They have a $350 million plus payroll. That's why the Warriors won championships. It's not because they moved to San Francisco, because they won them when they were in Oakland, because they were willing to invest in the team. Unfortunately, with the A's, we don't have that type of ownership. We don't have an ownership. In fact, they have the lowest payroll in baseball. Yet, and nobody's going to the game because most of the players people identified with no longer play for the A's. You have to invest on both sides of the coin. You want to build a fan base. You're going to have to make sure that it's loyal, that they understand not only the name of the team, but the players who are playing for that team. I don't think that's the case with the current Oakland Athletics.
Elihu, last year, again, COVID, this year, a little bit different. The A's will have the lowest attendance in Major League Baseball 2 years in a row,
yes.
About 700,000, and that's all self-inflicted.
Mm-hmm.
You use the example of the Warriors, the A's, what the Giants did to turn things around from Candlestick to have one of the highest attendances year after year, because that unification that you talked about was there from day one. You didn't have to invent it. It was real.
Hey, Andy, that gives me a good jumping off point because I want to come to Pat, because Pat is the symbol of Bay Area success and how the Giants Stadium came about. How did that come about? We don't have Mayor Brown here.
I'll try to be quick. First of all, I worked on a stadium, on a stadium concept for the Giants for almost 20 years. I mean, I was a part of all the failed elections and all that. So I think the other thing, sometimes there has to be a crisis before things happen. And I don't think until Bob Lurie, who he did not want to move the team, but when he felt like he had no other options, he made a handshake deal and the team was going to move to Florida. That's when all the wheels started happening. And Peter McGowan and Larry Baer and Walter Shorenstein, they all huddled together in a smoke-filled room, and they said, "Okay, baseball's going to vote on this. We have to." So that effort would not have happened unless there had been the crisis. And if you study history, the Giants almost moved before 1975. So it took those kinds of things to get it together. And I think the success that we had, and yes, we had another election, but when we finally figured out that there may be a chance of privately financing it, and that was not a popular thing. I mean, it's much better to use taxpayers' money if you can do that. But we had 4 elections that sort of proved to ourselves that was just not going to fly. It's not going to happen. So everybody was a little afraid of a privately financed baseball park, but our ownership group got together and they said, "Okay, we'll stick with this thing and see if we can make it happen." We did an election, not to raise money, but I think in San Francisco, we did an election really to give, Mayor Brown and the other people sort of cover to say there is a mandate. And we also creating a vision of that little ballpark where, a left-handed hitter, we happened to have the best one in baseball at that time. He could actually hit a ball that would splash in the water. That little vision really went a long way. And, I have to say it was a scary at the time, but those were the things that were, having an ownership group that has the wherewithal and the vision, and frankly, also has the guts and the patience to realize that this is not like building a shopping center. It's not like building a hospital. This is having a party that, 40,000 people are going to show up to, 81 times a year. So it was, I think it was timing. It was all the failures in the past that sort of helped us get to that one success. And it was the crisis that was averted that kept the Giants in the Bay Area.
To pull out just one quick point, where Pat talks about this cooperative effort, you're building the most spectacular estate privately, but it's open to the public every day of the year. And that's really the key. You're opening up your front door to the public, even though it's a private entity.
Well,
and if you don't understand that DNA, you don't understand anything. How does Rob Manfred rationalize leaving the 6th largest market in the country for the 41st? How does he rationalize leaving Ricky Henderson, Vada Pinson, Lloyd Mosby, Kurt Flood, Bill Russell, Dave Stewart, and on and on and on, when when you have challenges of diversity in baseball from one of the most diverse markets with homegrown heroes like the Rickster to a market that doesn't have that. It's just unconscionable.
Well, we had an election that we said we'll build a free ballpark in San Francisco, in essence. Would you do that? And I have to say it, still a third of the people voted against it in San Francisco, which shows, I guess, the amount of confidence that the general public has in sports owners. But
I think more than that, more people read the front page than the sports page.
That's right.
And that's the political reality. It doesn't mean that it's not the right thing to do, but it requires leadership and some level of courage, because you're not necessarily going to be popular. You save the team, and the sports fans are very happy. The public is looking at the broader level of issues you're dealing with as a politician. Oh, we got crime. Oh, we got drugs. We got homelessness. Your priority is baseball? What universe are you living in?
Exactly. I mean, just go a quarter of a mile from 66th Avenue in Oakland, and you want to talk about priorities. It's not who's on second base. It's who's living on concrete, right, Elihu?
Exactly. Homelessness is a huge problem. Crime is a huge problem. And so you're trying to balance all of that out and say, wait a minute, but sports is a unifying factor. The one thing we can all be proud of, we're all A's fans, Warriors fans, whatever. And that's the thing that you look at. Civic unity comes about because of sports. It's the one thing that, regardless of your economic status, regardless of your race or your gender, anything else, you could all be a sports fan and have a unity around the local sports teams. And that's what I think is the real benefit, economically, socially, every other way you could think of. We all can love sports, whether we can even afford to go to a game or not. We all want to know what's happening with our local team, who are playing for our team. If they play long enough, like a Steph Curry or a Klay Thompson, you begin to say, hey, these people live in our community. These are our neighbors. They're not people who come and go. They're part of the community. And I think for many of the people in Oakland, when you had Klay living in Oakland and Draymond living in Oakland and Iguodala living in Oakland and others in baseball living in Oakland in Alameda County, these are our neighbors. These are with us for at least next 10 years if they're young players. And we got excited and we wanted to go to the game to see people we knew, we identified with. I cannot tell you, last year I could tell you the name of everybody in the starting lineup for the A's. This year, I couldn't even do it if I had to read it off a script.
And these venues, the arena and the Coliseum, since 1968, there are town squares, right, Elihu? You talked about it. You don't know who you're sitting next to, and you don't care. You're all on the same team. It's a Bay Bridge series. You're booing the Giants,
right?
But hey, folks, sorry about that. An unstable internet connection never happened before. I just switched over to Chrome, and the show continues. But fortunately, you all are still talking, so that's great.
That's not going to be a problem with this group, Zennie.
Hey, I want to get in and basically continue with. I was talking with Pat, and my question to Pat was, how did the location for what we now call Oracle Park come about? And the reason why I asked is because I've said this to Dave Cavall on my show, and by the way, Dave has informed us on my show that the Vegas stadium, if that happens, will be a retractable roof. He said that definitely. But how did you come?
And where's the $1.6 billion coming from of private financing? Going back to what Elihu talked about before, $1.6 billion.
Well, I'll just break this. I believe with 90% certainty they're waiting on Phil Ruffin to buy the Flamingo, and that's why I believe there's a delay. But Pat, the reason why I ask how the location came about is because A's people, whenever they came for the Bay Bridge series, would always look and say, it would be great if we had a stadium right over there, and they'd point at Howard Terminal. And so I think
Well,
that's what, this is.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, listen, there was, and these guys all know that there are probably 8 different stadium sites. I mean, was it San Jose? Is it 4th and Townsend? Is it, Mayor Agnos had a piece of property down by the San Francisco airport that for years, he could get his hands on and could do it. So I think that after all, when the team was almost getting ready to leave, and the group came together to make it stay, it was kind of like, okay, what's going to happen now? I think we have sort of given up the appetite for any kind of public financing. It took losing a few elections to do that. So to privately finance one of these things, and we were trying to build Pacific Ballpark at the time. It was $319 million, wound up being about 350. Privately financing, I mean, that's a big deal. And we had to raise a lot of money. We had to do a version of personal seat licenses. The Raiders had sort of done it, and they'd really failed at it. We were trying to do the same thing, but they taught us a lot of things. I mean, we did a couple things. The charter seats that we did, they could be shared with people. They could be willed. The rights went on forever. And so I think people had more confidence. We built a pool table size model of the ballpark and took it around to the neighborhoods of San Francisco to show people they could go up and touch it. And I think it was, this was, we really had to get in front of people, and they had to be able to listen to us. I don't know how many meetings we went to. And there was a lot of detractors, people who just said, look, we don't, even if they didn't believe that we were going to privately finance it. A lot of people didn't. The sports experts certainly didn't. They kind of went away. They thought it was too thin of a deal. But you know what? It was having confidence. I got to give Peter McGowan really a lot of credit, because he had marketing savvy, but he had the guts to keep the ownership group together to back while we were trying to raise the money. But it was, there were times when this whole thing was sort of teetering back and forth, and we managed to get it together. So it was a total thrill ride to raise the money, but it was not a slam dunk by any stretch of the imagination.
And you also did have some help from the redevelopment agency in San Francisco,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, we had, tax increment financing, just like any development would have. And so we did have some of that would help, reconfigure the transportation. The transportation was a big question. People thought, the model of a stadium was to put a little stadium in the middle, a spaceship in the middle of a gigantic parking lot. So people were afraid there's going to be gridlock, whatever. And what we sort of had to prove was that this whole dispersed transportation program, where somebody would be very willing to park 3 or 4 blocks away, or take a muni to the ballpark, or ride a bike or walk. If it was safe, people would do it. And as it turned out, when we built the ballpark, we actually had too much parking. But we knew that we had to have more than we needed to sort of, allay people's fears. So we learned a lot. And if we were doing, there would be certain things we would do a little bit differently if we were building it today. But I think it was the timing. It was the confidence that people had. I think it was the confidence that the local elected officials, led by Mayor Brown, and who actually helped navigate through all the different regulatory agencies, that made it work. It was confidence that we had a vision, and we showed people what it was. But that vision was born out of a lot of the failures that had happened before.
Yeah, and I would turn to you, Zennie, and Mayor Harris. I still have a difficult time understanding where $12 billion of private financing is coming from for the A's new urban ballpark city at Howard Terminal. And good luck to the next mayor after Libby is termed out, because my crystal ball says there's not going to be any decision about this in the next few months. I don't care what anybody says, but you're going to have to come up with incredibly serious money at Howard Terminal, or that much money to build a dome stadium and do the land deal in Vegas. It's 17 years since John Fisher's owned this team, and never once has he spoken publicly about why he owns the team.
Well, Andy, Elihu, and Pat, let's collectively stick our head in the lion's mouth and ask that question right now. Why is Oakland losing its teams? First, the Raiders.
I want the first shot at that.
Yeah,
First
please,
of all,
Elihu.
Okay, let me start with baseball and football. Neither Al Davis, the only asset he really had was the Raiders. He wasn't a billionaire, other than whatever he had in ownership of the Raiders. If you look at the current ownership, the Fishers have the money, but they're not willing to invest whatever funds they have in their sports asset. So that's part of the problem. You look at what happened with Latham and Goober. They wanted to move to San Francisco. They could have stayed in Oakland. They would have cut a deal and bought the existing arena, and the city probably would have sold it to them. And the land is on. That would have been a cheaper deal, but they believed that they were better off financially owning a new stadium, or new arena, I should say, San Francisco. So part of it is having ownership that's wealthy enough and committed enough to the team and to the city and to building facilities that will see this as a long-term. We ain't going nowhere. And we're going to stick with our fans. We're going to develop a loyal fan base. And certainly the Warriors had an incredibly loyal fan base in Oakland. They did not move because the fan base wasn't supporting them. They moved because they chose to move.
You want to catch that, Pat?
Well, I would add, Mayor Harris, that the Raiders or the Warriors had not only the most loyal, but they had the most resilient fan base, probably in the NBA. I mean, the support they gave that franchise during some of the down years was just remarkable, and it was noted. I gets back to creating a vision and developing trust. Eddie said it, developing trust and confidence. And so we put a stake in the sand and said, okay, we're going to build this ballpark on the waterfront. Mm-hmm. We're not going to use any taxpayer money. It's going to be privately financed. The users are going to do it. And we kind of sort of set that out, and that was our mantra, and we never wavered. And we had a lot. I mean, talking about, I wish Willie Brown was here, because he had to put his face on this thing,
right?
And so
I'm calling him now, Pat. I'm trying to find.
Mayor Harris, it's also a confidence game. Do people do they trust you? Do they trust you? Do they have confidence? Do they have confidence that you can do what you say you will do?
Right.
And all we have sort of is our reputation. So everybody put it on the line, and
Well, and I convinced Cohan to stay in Oakland. He was thinking about going to San Jose or not San Francisco, but going down and playing at the SAT. What's the name of that mall?
SAP and Levi's and all of that in Silicon Valley.
Right. So he was ready to go down there, and I convinced him that I could refurbish the arena and make it a first-class NBA arena with all the luxury boxes, and we gutted the place. Basically, the only thing that they have up there were the windows and the walls, and everything else in there is brand new. So the point I'm making about all that was, that's what we committed to do. But he wanted to stay because of that fan base, and he ultimately was not leaving that fan base because of the situation. If you look 50 miles in any direction, that's the Oakland Coliseum Arena area is the center of the Bay Area. And with the transportation between BART, Amtrak, and as well as the freeways, you really don't have a better location for all people in the Bay Area to be able to get.
Well, it worked for the Warriors and it worked for the A's for years and years and decades and decades.
And it worked for the Raiders.
Mm-hmm. Right. And part of the Raiders, I would say, was the NFL. This might be a bit harsh, but the NFL used the Raiders as a lab rat. Right. That deal wasn't negotiated by Mark Davis. That deal was negotiated and pushed by Roger Goodell and other owners, Jerry Jones, because they wanted to be in Vegas, looking at legalized gaming, looking at tax.
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'll tell you what happened with that.
Yes.
When the Clippers were bought by Steve Ballmer for $2 billion, that sent every NFL owner, particularly Jerry Jones, through the roof. That happened in 2012. Why? There was no team. There was no team in LA. And prior to that, in Elihu, when I was working for you, and I got to know Michael Ovitz because I was dispatched by Mayor Harris, my boss here, to find a buyer for the Athletics when it looked like Sean Hoffman were going to, sell and all that. And you guys got the gentleman from the grocery store gentleman involved.
Bob Piccinini, George Zimmer, Leo Hindery, Stephen K, and on and on.
Right. And Stephen K is a heck of a guy. I miss him. Anyway, Elihu got me involved. I got Lon Rosen, got him on the phone, and I got a hold of Frank Thomas, through Lon Rosen, and Magic Johnson, and we're going to put them together. And that the idea basically was to have them own the Athletics. That was the idea. But what happened was that as that was happening, then there was talk about the Super Bowl being in San Francisco. And there was that bid for the 2003 Super Bowl, because that happened at the same time as like 98, 99. And then, of course, Ed Moransky had, miscalculated the construction cost for that stadium. So all that seemingly unrelated set of events led to our going after the Super Bowl that San Francisco dropped. But there was a little weird thing, okay? Prior to that, there was a bid to build and establish a franchise in LA by a guy named Michael Ovitz. He was challenged by Lee Steinberg, who I was trying to get on this show, but he had another commitment. He was on yesterday. And the only reason he got outbid by the person I'm about to mention was because he didn't have $730 billion, and Bob McNair, rest in peace, did. Had it not been for that, the LA Basin would have had an NFL team. They never did. Then, of course, there came the naming rights agreement that was sort of like in name only. Remember, Farmers Insurance paid $700 million. And
greatest deal in the history of sports while they threw their name out there and didn't have to pay for it.
Absolutely, which to the NFL, because I started covering the NFL in earnest in 2005. That was the first time I covered the draft. But the owners are always talking about how they get a team in LA. And so here comes Steve Ballmer, and boom. Right then in 2012, I was at NFL Honors, and the talk was we got to get a team in LA. I told Eric Grubman, not Eric Grubman, I'm sorry. It was, come on, I'm not getting that old yet, am I?
No, you're a veritable kid. Eric Grubman was Roger Goodell's.
Right. But what happened at the NFL Honors that I was at was Joe Brown came over, who's my mentor. And Joe was the executive vice president of the NFL, who was actually was the person who really got me involved in bringing the Super Bowl to Oakland, because we were behind the 8 ball. And he said, Zennie, you get me this document. And I went to Robert Bob, and I said, fine, another story. Well, my point is, I said to Joe in passing, I said, Joe, can I talk to you? I want to be the person that brings the NFL to LA. I have the contacts. I can do it. I wanted the job that Eric Grubman did. That's why I know it so chapter and verse, okay? Because I felt like
remember that night at the Paramount Theater when Roger came to town with Grubman and did that whole dog and pony show?
Yeah. So my point is that what the league was doing then is fashioning a reason to be in Los Angeles. Davis wanted to be there, Mark Davis, and I have right here on Zennie 62 that very press conference where Stan Kroenke won the vote. I just interviewed Bob Iger of Disney. Mark was turning 3 shades of red right over on the side there. He came up and instead of congratulating anybody, he basically said, well, we didn't get what we wanted. But at that time, it turned out that as he was doing that, as he was saying we're going to get a new home, he didn't say anything about Oakland. He had already contacted, because of Napoleon Kaufman, Sheldon Adelson, late Sheldon Adelson, rest in peace, got the ball rolling. Okay. So my point
is, this is a board game, and I'm not sure anybody is going to remember every single name here. Can I, when you finish,
except me, I'm almost done. I'm almost done. My point is this: they never wanted to have a team in Oakland. There was this NFL model. I mean, past that. Okay. There's an NFL model that says you have one team You have a local revenue base of 25 million. You go from there. That's why they were trying to get the Raiders and the 49ers to be, and remember Elihu and everybody here in the early aughts. We're trying to get the Raiders and Niners together. That was the idea. But Mark didn't want to play ball there either, okay? So Mark was sort of the fly in the ointment for them of consolidation, of revenue consolidation. But yeah, he did bring gambling, and he did show them another way, and Jerry Jones was behind him, and so it became sort of a little internecine war, all right? But but the point that I'm making is that Oakland and what they did to us was from day one a fake. And I as a person who wanted Eric Grubman's job, I knew what was going to go down. I knew how to handle it better than the NFL did. I'm just here to tell you that now. I've never told that.
No, I mean, there's no doubt about it. And I would turn to Elihu and you, Zennie, a bit of a change. 155 acres at the Coliseum. The A's supposedly have half of it, 50% that they bought from the county for $85 million. Ray Bobbitt is negotiating with the city for another $85 million. That is the greatest land steal since Peter Minuet paid $23 in freaking clamshells to the Lenape Indians to own Manhattan Island.
Right.
It is a complete and utter question mark of real estate. To Elihu's point, the most centrally located place in the Bay Area is right there at 66th Avenue. What will that become if the A's take the next plane to Las Vegas? What will happen to that incredible piece of land that's had 80 million people come through the turnstiles?
Elihu?
Everybody knows where it is. Look, I can tell you the story real quick because it's one of my favorite stories. So when the Raiders were thinking about coming back to Oakland, I had a meeting in my office with two gentlemen that I still fear, even though they're both dead. That was Joe Alioto and Al Davis. And they walked to my office, and they literally like two sharks. And they were circling me. It looked like they were trying to figure out which one was going to take a bite out of me. And I was meeting with them alone, and I regretted it as soon as they came in the room. But you talk about some guys who understood leverage and their position, both as lawyer and sports team owner. You know, those are the kind of people that know how to make deals. And, you know, I don't know that Mark Davis is up to that kind of a deal making. I think that, quite frankly, he was over his head. The Vegas deal walked in and kind of grabbed him. And from the standpoint that you had basically a town that would basically give up everything for a major league team, you know, it was a deal made in heaven. But I think, quite frankly, that, you know, for Vegas, to have the ability to talk about Super Bowls, to have, you know, another major league team that they could show we're a major league city, even though we're a relatively small market, I think was something that, you know, quite frankly, you know, it's hard to compete with.
Yeah, I got to ask you a question. What's Mayor Schaaf doing wrong?
Well, I'm not going to say it in a public media, but, you know, let me just say this. She was the head cheerleader at Skyline.
Oh,
Okay.
Finish.
You can finish.
Nothing else needs
No,
to be said. Nothing else needs to be said.
Andy?
I go back to the original point, teamwork, leadership, and trust. You need to learn how to fight. And I mean fight intelligently. She's having rings run around her by Rob Manfred and people at Major League Baseball. Rob Manfred came out a few weeks ago to say there would be no relocation fee directed to the A's if they moved to Vegas. It was discussed that fee would be $500 million. If that doesn't tell you that MLB is clearing the path for the A's to go to Vegas,
Yeah.
then nothing else does. And Libby keeps talking about this transformative location at Howard Terminal. Where's the $12 billion coming? And as Pat talked about, it took the Giants 21 years now to do the kind of work that they're doing on Mission Rock. And they had their act together. The Bay Area is very complicated. How many years will it be before $12 billion is returned to any taxpayers in Oakland at Howard Terminal? Libby is out of her league. I will say it, out of her league.
What do you think, Pat?
I like Libby. I think she's doing the
I love
best.
Libby.
What she doesn't have,
I think everybody likes Libby. That's
what she doesn't have is she doesn't have an owner who really wants to stay, who really wants to be part of Oakland. I mean, and that's really what it. Look, I've learned that until something actually happens, anything can happen. So, the $12 billion, it's a very romantic proposal, and it looks wonderful. To me, there's a lot of moving pieces there that, you think of any one of those things could probably sink it. So I think if you put that up against moving to Vegas, which seems like for them seems like an easier thing. I just question the will of the A's ownership to stay in the area. There was never any question about whether the Giants wanted to stay. Almost moved to Florida, group got together, and we were committed to stay, and we're committed to privately finance it, which was a huge risk at the time. I just don't think people are. She doesn't have anybody who's willing to take that risk.
I gotta throw in something too. We can't forget Gene Kwan and losing the Warriors. And the reason why I say that is this: I went to the 2011 Alice B. Toklas Democratic Club Breakfast Before Pride, and with my friend Beth Schnitzer, who's watching, and who dragged me there, and had a great time. But Gene's sitting at the back of the room. To make a long story short, Gene said to me, "I didn't realize," I'm saying this right here, plain as day for everyone to hear. She said, "I didn't realize the Warriors were as important to people as they were." And I said, "Mayor Kwan, Rick Welts is right over there. Go ahead and make a deal with him." She never walked over. I told Rick, the Warriors leaving the Oakland over my dead body. I want you to, well, I'm still alive, but I want you to go over and talk to Mayor Kwan. Never happened. Well, my point is that Mayor Kwan didn't get it, and then she let Fred Blackwell, who was our last real economic development guru, leave, and he's a CEO of the San Francisco Foundation. No leadership. So it's not all Libby's fault, but it's something in the water of Oakland that what is it, Elihu? What are we not doing?
Look, first of all, developing a site for a major league team is a challenge in a developed city. I mean, both the Jets and the Giants don't operate out of New York City. They operate in New Jersey, not even the state of New York. The San Francisco 49ers aren't in San Francisco. They found open space in Santa Clara County, 50 miles away. When we looked at a site, for example, the original site that I had for the Warriors was downtown Oakland behind the Marriott. And I had a deal with one of the owners, and the other owner vetoed it because he was convinced by the then head of the Coliseum Commission that downtown Oakland wasn't safe. And the fans,
George Vicassen Sr.?
Did I say that? I said the head of the Coliseum Commission. Who was that? Hey, I'm not mentioning names, live or dead. Point of it.
His son's on the current board, Elihu.
Well, my point is that was an option that I thought made sense for a downtown arena. If you remember, they also had a downtown ballpark arena up at Telegraph and 20th that the Robert Bob had put out, and Jerry Brown vetoed it. Yep. So when you're trying to locate a stadium in a developed city, finding 10 acres, 25 acres, whatever it might be, is a tremendous challenge. It was incredible. The Giants were able to operate in what used to be a very broken down warehouse district that nobody wanted to go to, South of Market. South of Market was like, hey, why are you going down there, to die? You know, but
Yeah.
the
Chernobyl.
Giants revitalized South of Market. South of Market became now trendy. The neighborhood grew up around.
Right.
The Giants.
66th Avenue.
So Mayor, you got to have some guts and some vision.
Zennie, so talking about guts and vision, there's nobody that represents that better than Xenophon Abraham. And, you know, I just realized that you never got a 1989 Oakland A's World Series championship ring after the team swept the San Francisco Giants in 4 games, and Pat Gallagher and Andy Dolich decided to have an earthquake during that period of time. So, Zennie, I'm giving you this ring.
Wow.
I'm giving you this ring.
That's incredible.
As your what you've given to this market in your heart and your soul and your brain to talk about these issues. There's nobody that deserves this any more than you.
What an incredible honor. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Right. And it won't even go on your thumb. It's too big.
Wow.
So are you going to bring us home here? Are we near the 9th inning?
Yeah, we are. Is it?
First of all, thank you both of you for being incredible sports executives and Bay Area resources. Because
thank you.
Quite frankly, you know, I love the Bay Area. I love its sports. You know, when I was, you know, a young child, because I'm older, there were no A's. There were no Warriors. The Giants moved here when I was a child. And we've seen the 49ers were here, but that was it. And now all of a sudden we've got a wealth of sports, and that wealth has been depleted somewhat by the departure of the Raiders and to some extent, but not the area, but to the city of the Warriors back to San Francisco. But, you know, the Bay Area, as I look at it, is a unified whole. And there are 9 counties and, you know, 8 million people who all, and now probably in the mega region, closer to 12 to 15 million people who all identify with the Bay Area as the economic and transportation center for that mega region. And I just think it's important to understand that, again, sports is one of the few things that give us common ground and a common sense of connection and unity. And so I can't tell you that all of the economic benefits, but I certainly can tell you the spiritual benefits that come from identification with a sports team as saying, again, we're all in this together. We're all Warriors fans, Raiders fans, A's fans, Giants fans, whatever it might be, Sharks fans. And that is a loss anytime one of those assets is no longer that unifying force in a comprehensive metropolitan area like the Bay Area.
I just want to thank you all for joining us. And Pat, we got to do this again. I had these two on a bunch of times. I catch you up, but it's just a dream come true to have so many people I admire so much and work for. Elihu was the best boss I ever had.
Just don't give up. Don't give up.
That's
yeah,
it.
Jimmy Valvano, don't ever give up. Don't never give up. And we still have the A's. I don't think they're going anyplace. I mean, the BCDC vote helps to a certain extent. And if John Fisher wanted to step up today and said, oh, I can build on those 56 acres, I'm in for $1.3 billion. Come on, step up.
One last question. Do you think that I don't believe that Fisher plans to be the long-term owner of the A's.
You think Laker should buy him?
I don't think he plans to be I don't think he's willing to invest in a sports franchise. I think he's trying to sell it. I think he wants to get the deal cut for a new stadium wherever it is and sell the team. I want to ask those guys for their response.
I agree with Elihu. I think there's a gap in his thinking.
Well, he doesn't. I'll tell you this, and I know John, and he's not showing that he loves the sport, that he loves it. And Dave Cobble is a fantastic guy with a lot of energy, but you want to hear from the person who's sort of holding the purse strings, and the fact that he's not willing to say, to get out in front of this thing. I don't know. That sort of tells me a lot. And Mayor Harris, you may be right. I who knows? If that's what it takes, then that's what it takes.
Well, I knew Walter Haas. Walter Haas was
you.
committed to the A's staying in Oakland. He was willing to sell it for a lower price to Steve Schott and Hoffman in order to keep it in Oakland.
Yep.
And he was willing to invest in a winning team. And they had over 2 million people coming to the Coliseum to see the A's under the Haas ownership. And I knew Roy Eisenhart and Wally Haas and all of them. And they all loved baseball.
Right.
All loved the A's. The players loved the team and the ownership, and they were absolutely committed.
And we all loved Oakland and the East Bay.
Right.
We all loved Oakland.
If Walter Haas had not died when he did, I don't believe it, but he had a major asset and a number of people that had to agree upon keeping it, which didn't happen. And the divide the booty came up, and the A's obviously went on the block. But
I want to close out with this question, since Pat knows John Fisher. Would Pat, Andy, and Elihu be willing to sit on a task force that Mayor Schaaf put together? Libby, I hope you are taking the hint.
I would be willing to be on a task force put together by the next mayor.
why? You're right.
The next mayor.
He's right. You're not going to get it done in the next few months. That ship has sailed.
I want a mayor with a big windshield, not one with the rear view mirror.
Well said.
Well said. Guys, we got to do this again.
Hey,
I really Willie involved too.
Can I, Zennie? Let me thank your guests and me as well, but thank them for the insight. I mean,
Yes.
This really is good. We never as sports fans, even as political leaders, we never get to look behind the curtain. Thank you for that peek.
Yeah, I want to thank
and thank you for giving your heart and soul to the community for your entire adult life, which looks like a great idea until you get your paycheck, right, Elihu?
Well, I'm gonna tell you something. I told them this was a good job, they never would let me have it.
Thank you, Zennie, for bringing us together.
Hey, everybody, you can stick around in the background. You've got to figure out how to get out. Everybody,
the two shot. Hey, Pat, how you doing? What's up?
Hey, folks, thank you very much for viewing and for all the ideas. And this has been a lot of fun, a ton of fun. I can't say enough about all the support I've gotten. Subscribe to Zennie62 on YouTube, and please bookmark oaklandnewsnowblog.com and check out my new blog, oaklandnewsonline.com, which is actually my old blog.
Ring for Zennie. Ring for Zennie.
Thank you. I can't wait to get it. It's like
I can't wait for you to show it on your hand.
Are you going to FedEx that to me? How am I going to get it?
Oh, I'll have to bring it over in a truck.
Okay. I'm 3,000 miles away. I'm in Fayette County, Georgia.
We'll work it out. Don't worry about it.
All right. Thank you. Hey, stick around in the background, guys. That
Okay,
ends this
you got
podcast.
it.
All right.